I would like to welcome all of you, our guests at home in front of their laptops, as well as our guests and speakers here in Cologne on site for our second LGBT plus in business event. We are happy to be here again. When we hosted that event for the first time last year, we knew that we did something right, but I think we were not, or we could have not imagined the traction this format would get. So there was one thing we were sure of, that we had hit the pulse of time, and that's why we're here again, back in Cologne, sitting here again in one room, still with a bit of a distance between us, but sharing the same concerns, goals, and beliefs. I'm looking forward to a very inspirational evening of insightful discussions, and let me firstly introduce myself to you. My name is Jorgen Schuenfelder. I'm a managing partner and director at BCG in Cologne. I'm responsible for BCG Turn transformation and restructuring work. I also headed the BCG Cologne office for a couple of years, but that's not why I'm here today. Today I'm here because I'm an ally. And because as a partner and personally, it's very important for me to bridge between communities and to express the need for change for majorities. Because I strongly believe that all employees at BCG and beyond should and can work in an environment and a workplace where they can develop and unfold to their full potential. At BCG, we have built a very successful business and pride network in recent years that my colleague and co-host Annika will introduce and explain to you now. With that, I would like to hand over to Annika. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jochen. I would also like to welcome you very warmly to today's second LGBT plus business event. We are very thrilled to see what the evening holds for us, and I'm very excited to discuss this important topic with you. This event will make a very important contribution to our goal, as BCG plans to increase the proportion of its employees from the LGBT plus community in Germany and Austria up to 5% until 2025. Let me briefly introduce myself. I'm Annika, a managing director and partner from Cologne's office. I'm a core member of BCG's public sector practice area and work mostly in infrastructure and defense and security. From the moment I joined BCG in 2015, actually a very fascinating journey began in my life because I also started to lead the PROUT at BCG network in Europe. PROUT at BCG originated in the US 20 years ago. And first of all, in focus was to provide a platform where employees could meet and network. Over time, our scope increased significantly. We have more than 750 members now across 35 countries and a dedicated D&I, a team that pushes our LGBT plus strategy across the globe. The PROUT at BCG network pushes the needle across 5 fields of action. Of course, we aim to recruit diverse talents. We foster physical and psychological safety, support community, networking and affiliation, and also facilitate professional and personal development. In the end, last but not least, of course, we also want to contribute to societal change. And this also includes our work with clients on their DEI journey. To this end, we would like to use this event to provide a platform for the open exchange on ideas and insights to really push for change. Throughout the evening, you will be able to ask questions and we will pass them on to our guest speakers. And of course, all of you here in the room, being here, you also have the chance to do so. I am particularly pleased to introduce our partners. We've teamed up with the PROUT at Work-Foundation to really make this event happen. I'm very pleased to introduce Jean-Luc Vey, co-founder and member of the board of PROUT at Work-Foundation, and he will tell us about the purpose of PROUT at Work. And I would also like to introduce to you our moderator, Holger Volland, who is a board member of PROUT Media AG and a real and active supporter of the LGBT+ community. Dear Holger, I'm happy to turn over the floor to you. Thanks for being here today and guiding us through the evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Annika and Jochen, for the kind introduction. I am really happy to be here tonight for two reasons. The first is personal, because for more than 20 years, I have worked in companies, and often I was the only and the first out person in the management team or in the boards. And this was an incredibly positive experience for me. So I'd like to hear more experiences today. The second reason is I'm coming from PROUT magazine, and PROUT is relying a lot on the idea that diverse networks can make companies stronger and better and help to innovate. Thanks very much for inviting me to be your host tonight. And for the next 2 hours, we are going to discuss diversity, LGBT+ talent, and how important it is to bring this conversation also to the executive suite. In many boards, active diversity management is still seen as a nice to have or as a marketing task, rather than a great way to improve company performance. Often it's the same boards who decide on rainbow-colored Pride weeks for customers, while at the same time not knowing how important it is to create an inclusive environment for their own colleagues. We hope that today's event from BCG and PROUT at Work can help to shed light on opportunities and chances and also success stories. Due to the ongoing COVID situation, we're having this event as a hybrid event, which means that we have a few selected guests here in Cologne, but also many people joining us on their screens from home. If you're joining us from the screen, please don't hesitate to use the chat function and ask your questions to the speakers, but also to the panelists. After every session, we will have some chances to integrate your questions into the discussion. But now to our first speaker, Dr. Felix Bärstecher. He's G&A Consulting People Director at BCG, and he will give us new insights of what LGBT+ friendly organizations need to know. Felix, your floor.
Thank you so much. When I started to think about tonight and what we should talk about, the first question I asked myself is, and we're going to talk about coming out at the workplace today, the first question I asked myself was, do I remember the moment when I came out in the workplace? And to be honest, I can't really remember the exact date or the month, but the one thing I can remember is a certain feeling and a certain emotion, a lot of anxiety, but also a lot of seriousness about this important step. And I would like to invite you all in the next 10 minutes and tonight, when you listen to what we talk about, to try to remember what it was like for you, or if you are an ally, try to remember what it would be like for you and what could be done to make this step easier. I'm going to share a couple of insights from our Out at Work study, and I think the most important fact that I'm going to tell you tonight is when coming out, the first 12 months are really important. We talked to more than 9,000 people, a lot of them part of the LGBTIQ community, and 70% who are out in the workplace did so in their first year. And when you look at the 20% who are not out in the workplace, the likeliness of them to come out decreases with every additional year. Why don't people come out in the workplace, you might ask, or people might ask? And actually we see when we look through different countries that there are still many people in the LGBTIQ community, in the Pride community, who believe that being out in the workplace is a serious disadvantage for them. Interestingly, 58% of the people who are out in the workplace talk about having been discriminated at one point in their professional career because they outed themselves as part of the Pride community. Why should companies matter? Why is it important for them? When you look at the data, you see that people who can be out in the workplace, they are more comfortable speaking up. They feel that they can be yourself, and they show a higher affiliation towards colleagues and also towards the company. So there is a real benefit in providing a safe opportunity, a safe space for people to come out. What can you do to support such an inclusive culture? And there are many, many things one can do. And I would just like to name a few. And I think it starts with talking about what you can do as an employer and actively promoting that you want to become a diverse employer, but also having a real D&Y leadership commitment towards employees and having an open dialogue amongst the different groups in the company. Interestingly, diversity is more and more seen as a holistic effort and not so much about catering to specific needs, but to make sure that each and every diversity group can find a safe space and that the company and the workforce as a whole can come together and agree upon how we should talk to each other and how we should treat ourselves. It's an open discussion about what kind of culture do we want to have, what kind of community do we want to be in our company. When you think of the different steps the HR chain can do to help you in guiding you through the many, many touch points an employee have, I'd like to show you one example coming from BCG where we tried to make the effort and really nailing it down. And I know this chart is very complicated, and unfortunately we don't have enough time to go through all the details. But the one thing I would like to show you is that it is worthwhile to really think what are the different steps, creating a safe space, foster a sense of belonging, but also when you are a company that is more among the ones that have done things to promote this, maybe even support an inclusive culture beyond your company. If you are a leading company and you feel you've managed the task within your own company, try to help others. I think we still need poster people, poster companies who actively engage and show their support in the community and also encourage others to follow their path. Annika mentioned one step that we actively decided as BCG a couple of weeks ago, and you might have seen this in the press, where we said, let's try and aim for a 5% pride share in our workforce by 2025. And we had a lot of internal discussions. Is that the right step to do? Do we need to show this active signal? But quite frankly, our feeling was, yes, we still need these signals. And we need to show also to the people around us that we still care. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Felix. And we actually have one question regarding the Pride quote. Mm-hmm. How did your customers react to that? Were there any reactions from companies BCG was working for?
Usually when it comes to our customers, but also to our workforce, it's like we see a large spread of different reaction. What I was very fond of was that we felt a lot of support, both within the company, but also coming from outside. Like, I'm very proud to work for a company who does something like that. I'm very proud that BCG is doing that. But also from outside, yes, we are thinking, we have the same discussions. We are thinking about also joining this pledge. But of course, there was also other feedback, and my feeling was it was a lot of, in the terms of discussion that we had when it comes to female shares, and basically the question is always like, do we now start to not look at quality anymore? Will we hire people just because they are gay, because they're part of the Pride community? And what I always tell is like, that's not the point. That's not what we're talking about. But of course, and I think that shows how important this step was. We still see different reactions, and it's not a step where everyone says, that's very nice that you're doing it.
Personally, I think it's a great step, actually, and I really do hope that tonight's event is going to help start the discussion and make it even more intense. Thank you very much, Felix, for your time. And for our second keynote, we welcome Dr. Jean-Luc Vey. He's board member and also the co-founder from PROUT at Work-Foundation. He will talk about diversity and inclusion in action. Jean-Luc.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. It's so nice to be here, and first of all, I would just like to thank BCG for one more time to be here. I remember last year that was already a great event, so thanks that we can be the partner today one more time. And so I would like to present you briefly a little bit what we are doing. And in fact, after what just said Felix, I don't know what I should say as a joke, because it's exactly what we are promoting. It's what you said is exactly what we are working on and trying to push. I will show you some examples. The idea of PROUT at Work is already around 15 years away, and it was just first an idea, then it was first a loose network of LGBT employee network, and then we finally achieved, after a long discussion, to decide we want to be a foundation, and it took us 1 year to start the foundation, and we had the official start in December 2013 with 8 companies, and now we have 53 companies on board. From all sides, and what we see ourselves on one side as a think tank, bringing new subjects, pushing new themes in Germany about LGBT, but of course we also see us as coach, mentor, a little bit also like the job you're doing. We are consulting or helping the companies and networks to go forward, to do also actions together and to push the subject of LGBT diversity together. So based on the time, I will go further. This is the companies who are a proud employer at the moment, so our sponsors, and you see there lots and all all branches. Like I always say, from Accenture to Siemens through a lot of others, and many are present today here. And just to give you an idea, and it will just support what Felix just said, if I may, one point which we find very important is role models. Therefore, we started 3 years ago already, first with Ulala and now on our own, this Proud Performer list. And I'm happy that we have also some of the Proud Performer here today. And the idea is giving visibility to role models, all LGBT role models, but also straight allies. Because as was said also before from Felix, that's very important. That's why we do this. And we had a very, very strong and positive reaction. So you see some examples. And this year we also added several new lists, like I said, so straight allies or people from culture, in politics, and etc. So that's very important for us. And that's why the conference that we do once a year will be focusing on role models in all directions, because this is something we want to push forward. As well, we will also give some awards, that time for companies, but mostly for the networks. And this is also important, recognition from the work that companies are doing, and especially what networks are doing. It's something also that companies like, as you always know, as you also know, but that's important to give recognition. What is also important is also the subject of corporate advocacy, that companies really become more involved, let's say like this, and that's why we are going to do with IBM, also in connection with our conference, an event about this corporate advocacy with, let's say, top management participation, because we think it's something which we should push forward. Very important too, this year we launched the Pride Day Germany, and the interesting thing is, in fact, the initiative came from the company themselves. They are asking us, what can we do to show our involvement and our support for the Pride? And we say, hey, yeah, and then let's do this. So we did a day where many companies posted action that they were been doing, and also all around the month of July. And it was a great success, and it gives a lot of visibility one more time for the company, but also, of course, companies, the networks, but also for the LGBTIQ community at the workplace. And the funny thing, or the good thing, is they're going to be a voting online, and the winners will be presented also at our conference. So visibility, one more time, is something which is very important in what we do, and also what BCG is doing as today. We spoke as well about the involvement of CEOs. That's why we do once a year a business dinner, the dinner beyond business, as we call it, only with CEO or CEO -1, with a very top speaker about LGBT subjects. And it's very important, and that's our experience, that you work on all levels in companies, from the employees through HR till to the top management, to make things move and to make the cultural change that we are looking for. But we also do push or organize things to push new subjects, like, for example, our working groups. We are working together with several companies on a trans guideline, also a standard trans guideline that companies may use. But also we are bringing the subject of supplier diversity, which I think will be a very strong leverage for diversity, and also will help the LGBT-owned business to go forward. And so because we think it's important, and it's also a wish from the companies to come together and to work on common, let's say, ideas, and to develop standards, if you like, in that sense. Of course, we do also many things for networking and for the networks as well, because it's very important, and there's also a wish from the companies and the networks to learn from each other. So we have our regular 2 gatherings, more or less once a month, always in a different company. When we go deeper into a subject, we do a deep dive as well, which is more half-day workshop. And what is new, now we have also a meeting or a regular exchange, at least every 6 months, between diversity leaders in companies. Also, and all the time, what is our goal is to have a place where people speak openly, not only about what works, but also what does not work, and what we can do really in practice. So that was a quick way, and we spoke about coming out as well, and that's something which is very important. That's why already I think it's already the 4th or 5th year, we propose a coming out seminar. And the idea started from the Commerzbank, which they did it internally, and then they gave it to us, more or less, and now it's open to everybody. And what is important is it's done in a way that the people who can apply by us, and the company they work for doesn't know who they are, but they know only 1 or 2 persons from that company are participating, so that you keep the anonymity. And it's a rather small group that people can really discuss and think about how they can do their coming out the best for them. So it was really a lot of things. I'm sorry I was picking rather quick, but it's only a part, and there are still other things. But the important thing is we work at all levels. And I think it's important, and we can only be successful when we all work together, companies, but also us, and networks, but also a representative of the state and the people in general. So I only could say, let's work even more together and be more visible. That's very important, and try to move even more things. For example, we had also a very nice, I think for me, new initiative, which was started by Metro, to change the law concerning the donation of blood for gay men. because till yet it was, you need as a gay man to 12 months of abstinence. There was a law, and through this initiative we have been able with others to reduce it at least to 4 months, and we are working on so that it's exactly the same for everybody, that there's no difference. And I'm very happy because I see that companies are ready also to take stand. We have 20 companies who have signed a declaration for the change of this law, and for me it's a very important step. So that was my part. I guess I was already too long. Thank you for your attention. Thank you so much. I was not too long, I hope.
No, that was perfect. Thank you very much for sharing your insights with us, Jean-Luc.
Yes.
There are a couple of questions, actually.
Wow, okay.
So
Thank you.
the first question is, how important is visibility of out executives to the general change in society?
Wow. I have a few hours? No. I think it's very, very important, and I think it's for all groups, not only for LGBT. You can think about people of color, etc. It's very important that people stand up and say who they are and don't hide, because many other people are looking for an example, somebody they can follow, and I think it's very, very, very important. And we see also, which I mean, some of them are also here, how much visibility it brings to do something like this list that we have as Proud Performer. And that's why we did, because it puts a lot of attention. And my experience is it's very important. And when I discuss, for example, with students, LGBT students, or people who want to start in their career, they really look for people who are already there and who have already had a successful career. So it's very, very important, my experience.
The second question is,
yes.
Is actually related to that.
Yes.
How can companies promote their out executives or their out members,
yes,
if they're not member of Proud at Work, of course?
Okay, well, there are many ways, but I would say, I think, like you said, visibility. So I think they can do that by, by promoting, generally speaking, diversity. Of course, and I give you a concrete example. For example, if we look at the people on our list, they come from all kinds of companies, proud employer or not. And there you see a big difference. You see companies who do a press statement, where they say they are very happy to have these people, and etc. And some others who don't do anything, even not a statement in their intranet. So I think it's important to give place in the media and to say that you have to promote these people, let's say, like this, for example, through communication. And yeah, that would be my quick answer to that. I guess don't give these people the opportunity to be visible. Okay. I think.
And how can a company actually become member of Proud at Work? Is that easy, or is it like a long process where you have to?
Of course, it's a long and hard process. No, it's rather easy. I would say, please contact. I think the point is, of course, we want to know the company before you can join. I mean, we would like to know what do you do? What are your plans? Are you, if I may say so, do you really mean it? Because we only want to take on board companies who really mean it, independent at what level you are. If you are at the start or already, so it will take some time, but in fact the easiest way is to contact us. Then we come into contact and we can meet and exchange and see. And we always try to build it in step by step. So first do little things, maybe events together and so on. And when the trust is there, I would say then we go into the next step, becoming a proud employer and all of this. But let's say it's easy, but it's important for us, of course, to have on board companies who really mean it and not, really mean it. I think it's the best.
Let's call this a nice but really tough assessment.
Yeah, thank you. That sounds very good. Yeah, well,
thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
There was actually the question whether the presentation is available afterwards, and it will be available afterwards in the YouTube stream.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Coming to our third keynote, and that will be delivered from Geneva. And the speaker is Gurchatan Sandhu. He's president of UN Globe. And there he helps to master diversity and inclusion within the UN. And I do hope that we have a connection to Gurchaten.
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you. Great to
I
have
can
you
hear
with
you.
us.
Great, I can hear you. I'm sorry you can't see me at the moment. I've not appeared on the screen as yet. I can see.
Yes, you are. I think you are on screen in the stream. And
Perfect.
yeah, Gurchaten.
Okay.
Virtual
Hi.
stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. And my name is Gurchaten Sandhu, Nanu. My pronouns are he, him, or they, them. I work at the International Labour Organization as a program officer for the Fundamental Principles and Rights at Work branch on non-discrimination. In addition to my job, I'm also the president of UN Globe. UN Globe is the group or the interagency association that represents LGBTIQ plus people or personnel across the UN system. Now, my keynote today, I'll be delivering 3 key points in particular. But before we even get there, let me tell you a little bit about UN Globe and what it is and what it does. Now, many of you think, well, why would we need an LGBTI personnel group in the UN system? After all, it's the UN. It must uphold values of human rights and diversity. And if not at the UN, where else? Indeed, we should hold the UN to a high pedestal and high accountability. But like a company, and the UN has a board of directors. Now, our board of directors are our member states, 193 member states who set the internal staff regulations and personal regulations and rules for all personnel. Now, out of those 193 member states who act like boards of directors who set these regulations, 70 of whom criminalize LGBTIQ plus people or same-sex intimacy in their countries. Now you can imagine what the impact is. In addition to that, we have colleagues who come from all parts of the world who believe or are taught to believe that being LGBTIQ plus is wrong, or they think they've never met an LGBTIQ plus person. Consequently, this leads to a culture of silence and, if not ignorance, in our workplaces. And consequently, this impacts the work that we do. And in turn, it hurts the people that we intend to serve, in particular LGBTIQ plus people. So UN Globe exists to change the culture and to start a conversation within the UN system about how to become more inclusive, diverse, and equal for all. Now, 15 years ago, if you had asked me 15 years ago, or if I would be standing here today, I would have told you you were lying, or I would have laughed and said that would not be possible. You see, my journey started 15 years ago at the ILO, even longer, I think now, when I first joined as an intern. And some of the first advice within weeks of joining, I was told not to come out, because I would not get a contract. Now, fast forward 15 years, a lot has changed. Indeed, workplaces are becoming more inclusive for us. I went on my own personal journey and was able to seek help and counseling to be able to come to live with parts of myself that had shut out and locked out. Now, over the years, while I've been serving as president of UN Globe, I've learned 3 key lessons. Now, these lessons are not just for LGBTIQ plus people or for allies in the room. These lessons are also for companies, for our societies, for our leaders. The first lesson I've learned is know who you are. The first thing that, after coming out, I thought, well, that was me. I identify as a gay man. I'm done. In fact, I was very, very wrong. My journey actually started out when I was coming out. And by coming out, I didn't just come out once. As Jean-Luc has explained, we come out multiple times on many different occasions. And by coming out and going on this journey, I started to learn more and more about who I am and what parts of my identity make me. I started to question deeper and came to terms with the intersecting parts of my identity, vis-a-vis my race, my faith, my class, You see, I come from a working class background, from parents of who are migrants, and I'm a first generation born in the UK. And many of these parts I had shut out because I thought, well, I was taught to believe a narrative that there's certain spaces and certain parts of society that I just did not belong to. I learned as a consequence of coming out and understanding better who I am, and embracing all these aspects of myself. Now, this point is really important when it comes to intersectionality, but I'll come back to that in a minute. Now, knowing who you are is very important, not just for the LGBTI community, but also for allies as well. This issue of coming out, of understanding sexual orientation is not just about us versus you or others versus straight versus gay. By understanding your sexual orientation, whether you are straight, whether you're a lesbian, whether you're gay, you can be part of this movement too. Understanding your identity vis-a-vis race, vis-a-vis your gender is part of this movement too. It's also important that your journey doesn't just stop when you've come out. For me, my journey actually started, like I said, by coming out. And now I've actually started to question or challenge parts of my gender identity too, and say, well, what makes me a man? Do I feel that I am a man? And understanding that actually, no, parts of me, there are parts of me that I've actually shut out. My feminine side, my queer side. And over the years, when I first thought I was a gay person or a gay man, I'm actually identifying as a queer, non-binary person now. So knowing who you are is very, very fundamental, and understanding who you are so that you can come into the spaces and bring every single part of your identity. You see, we don't leave parts of our identity at the door. And this is my second point. Intersectionality is key in our movements. We must be able to bring our full selves into these spaces and stand in the fullness of ourselves. I cannot leave parts of my identity at the door when I come into the office. I cannot leave parts of my identity when I am entering a room, such as today. I'm here in my fullness as someone who is of Sikh heritage, of a working class background, belonging to as a first generation queer person. I hold these identities very close to my heart, and ensure that when I come into those into spaces, then I represent these parts of these identities, not just these identities, but these communities as well, because that's my duty as a leader too. So intersectionality is key here. And it's also key to understanding not just yourself as to know who you are, but it's also an important part of my third point, which is solidarity. Now, a lot of us have been talking about solidarity, about allyship. Allyship is very, very fundamental. Indeed, we say we are allies. We attend pride parades. We join we march with flags. We share our pronouns. Now, but how far will your allyship go when actually you're not sharing economic, political, and cultural power, or even space? Now, let me give you an example. In a workplace within the UN system, one of the UN entities had built during the renovation, had put in place a single occupancy bathrooms across the building. Now, once renovations were completed, people started to move back into the building, and there were a lot of complaints. I am not using that bathroom. Men are disgusting, or that bathroom is for women. Now, the very people that claim to be allies to LGBTIQ plus people refuse to use those even bathrooms because they were for someone else, or other people are disgusting. So it becomes a question of how far is your allyship? And we need to move from allyship into solidarity. How are we sharing our power and our privilege with others? This is fundamental beyond the workplace, because your allyship needs to happen outside of the walls of your workplace too. It's no good being an ally in the workplace when you're saying the right things, doing the right things, when you're going out and voting for leaders who are putting in place rules and laws and policies in place and not taking any action that persecute against LGBTIQ plus people. Your allyship is very shallow then. And therefore, we need to move from allyship into solidarity. And solidarity not from just outside of the LGBTI communities, but within. How many of us are allies to our trans siblings? How many of us are allies to our lesbian sisters, to our non-binary siblings? How much power do we share to them and understand that their issues are our issues too? Far too often I hear, even within the gay communities, that a refusal to share even economic power with other members of our community. And this is a big letdown, not just for our side, but for society as a whole. Now I want to also come back full circle. There's often a discussion around coming out. Coming out as what? Coming out as who? It's very important that we have that when we understand what coming out is, that for many communities it does not exist. What I'm consequently doing is, by coming out, is giving you power to validate me. Those words, like I said, in some communities those words may not exist, like my own. There is no word for queer, there is no word for gay. So what do I come out as? And can I come out? And is it safe for coming out? And instead, and what we should be doing is coming in. Coming in is about, this is who I am. I don't need your validation. You will accept me, but I'm creating that safe space for me to be able to share that with you. But that also onus puts that on the person receiving that information. What are you doing to create safe spaces for LGBTIQ plus people to come in? Now that takes me full circle. It's very important to start with know who you are, and ensuring that you can then have an intersectional approach and have more solidarity within your workplaces as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gurchat. And there's actually one question. It's a personal question. I hope you don't mind.
Please.
So you're a role model yourself, and coming out, as you explained, is not that easy. When and why did you take that path?
That started with me because I think there was a lot of pressure. For me to come out, I had a partner at the time and who said, you know, you're not okay with yourself. And I was like, yes, I am. Of course I am. He's like, no, you're not. You're still not out. And you're not able to say those words that, you know, you identify as queer or identified as gay at the time. And it wasn't until I went through therapy and counseling that I was able to share this with people. And that sort of, you know, that enabled me then to sort of come part of UN Glow, because I'm like, well, I don't want anyone else. I would not like anyone else to go through what I went through. You know, have to have this suffocating feeling of having to lie every day and make up white lies or pretend I was with someone else or change the gender of my partners. But it's very important then for me, whilst I was on this movement, that coming out is not for everyone. And this is why coming in is so important. Looking back at that time, I think there was, within the gay community, I also felt this sort of toxicity and pressure to come out, you know, without understanding those intersecting parts of my identity as well. You know, the references to my community, the references to my Punjabi and my Sikh heritage was very, very important as well. You know, can we come out in those contexts? So not everyone can come out, and then we can make those safe spaces as well. But being a role model and a leader is sort of, you know, providing that inspiration to others to be able to say this is who they are, even if it is within their confines of their own four walls and they're within the safety of their own home, even to themselves. Having that solidarity to yourself is very, very important. So it's important to role model that behavior on so many different levels. To show to other people that, you know, when you come into the room, you're not just representing yourself and your organization, but many of the communities that have come before you and the communities that are going to come after you as well. It's very important that I come into the room and ask, well, who is not here and who do I need to bring into that room as well? And show to other people, this is how we need to model our behavior. Now, let me give you an anecdotal piece of evidence. Someone once told me, a senior leader once said in the UN, I don't believe in legacy. And I was like, that really shocked me. For a person of color, faith, and of diverse sexual orientation and gender identity, I cannot afford not to have a legacy, because there's a community or a generation coming that is relying on me to have that legacy, to ensure that they can have a space at the table too. So it's very important that we have these, that we as leaders model these behaviors on so many different levels.
Thank you very much, Gurcharan, for sharing your thoughts and your path with us. And I really hope that thanks to your work, if there's going to be a re-edition of the SDG sometime in the future, that diversity will be part of it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
And we're coming to our panel discussion. And for the next session, I'd like to come our four panelists up on stage. And first is Kerstin Bramberger. She is co-founder and executive director of the Smart Leadership Institute. She advises companies, coaches managers, motivates and inspires teams, and brings individuals to peak performance. You're going to do that with us as well here. She has more than 20 years of international leadership experience, and due to her long-standing commitment to diversity and inclusion, Kerstin was voted among the top 10 of Germany's top 100 out executives in 2018. She's also a member of the Board of Trustees at the Peace Research Institute in Frankfurt and volunteer as tutor for digital products and applications in an internet cafe for people 60 plus. Welcome, Kerstin.
Thank you.
I'd also like to come up on stage Till Klein. Till is founder and CEO of the Berlin-based insurtech startup Vantic. The goal of Vantic is to reinvent private pension plans to make them attractive and suitable for today's generation. Behind the company is an international founder and investor team with many years of experience. And in addition, Till is a member of the advisory board of Wali Berlin, an incubation platform at ESMT. Before he decided to become an entrepreneur, Till was a partner and managing director at Boston Consulting Group in Berlin, and you were also a core member of BCG's global banking practice and an expert in digital business and operating models in retail banking. Welcome, Till. Thank you. Anna Schwarz, please come up on stage. Anna owns two roles at Boston Consulting Group. On the one hand, she's a consultant in the Berlin office and a core member of the Energy Practice Group. In this role, Anna focuses on M&A, carve-outs, and post-merger integrations within the global utility sector. On the other hand, as a BCG Henderson Institute ambassador, she studies the movement of people across borders and the many ripple effects that movement creates for innovation, for growth, and the spread of universal human values. Her latest research, published together with Dr. Johan Hanos on a new take on diversity and inclusion, made it obvious that diversity makes you more innovative, but being innovative does not make you more diverse. We're going to hear a lot about that later. Hello, Anna.
Hi.
And last but not least, Philipp Hessen. Please come up on stage. Philipp is head of Human Resources Germany and head of Global Total Rewards at Merck in Darmstadt, near my hometown Frankfurt. He started his professional career in the Siemens Group and was responsible, among other things, for the introduction of a share-based incentive and employee share culture. In 2011, he moved to the high-tech company Osram as Global Rewards and Executive HR Manager, and Philipp holds the 6th place on the top 100 out executive list in 2020. He has already been a guest at the Proud Performer Lunch at PROUT at Work to talk about his experiences. So you know Jean-Luc, and you are a role model yourself. And there's actually really a kind quote you said, our customers expect extremely efficient, high-performance products, and diversity is one of the prerequisites for this. It's a true driver of performance. That's what you said, and we're going to hear more about that. Hello, Philipp. We're going to start with you, Anna. Anna, in your recent report, you wrote, diversity makes you more innovative, but being innovative does not make you more diverse. What can a company actually can do to become more innovative and to become more diverse, and in which ways?
Thank you. Let me play the researcher role for just a little bit, but bear with me, I'm going to be more concrete later on. So what we looked at is, does diversity make companies more diverse, like you said, or is it the other way around? So to make it more tangible, is Google, because it's innovative, attracting talent that is very diverse, or is the diverse talent that is at Google making it more innovative? And the latter is the case. What we found is diversity drives innovation. And we have a lot of really good numbers that back that up. Diverse firms increase the innovation output or innovation performance, you can say, by 19% of firms. And 14% of the most diverse firms actually have better top and bottom lines in terms of crisis. So in the crisis, while others really flounder, diverse firms flourish. And the leader of our BCG Henderson Institute, so the think tank of BCG, said, okay, what we get with having more diversity is we get cognitive diversity. And cognitive diversity is what we really need in terms of crisis, but also in terms of innovation when we need to reinvent ourselves. It's about evolving the company, getting it to a new stage, reimagining what our business model can be, what our value proposition can be. But diversity is something that we can look at in numbers, and getting up numbers is the one thing. Making diversity work is much harder, and I think that is something that everybody here has experienced. And that to us is like overcoming frictions. It's frictions of access, it's frictions of teaming, and it's frictions of getting output, right? And so what we look at in our research, and the research is something we do in a quantitative way, but also talking to a lot of companies that we work with or that we consider our leaders in terms of diversity of origin of people, diversity in gender, diversity in LGBTQ integration. And so the one thing I talked about access, to us that is about talent, getting talent into companies, getting talent to work into companies, but also integrating with your ecosystem where your company is. I'm just going to give you two examples. Like a lot of people, and maybe you can give more examples about that, but it's about recruiting people and where do you get the best talent. One of the firms that I talked to, it's a leading tech startup, it's a unicorn by now from Munich. They actually go to the countries where people are from. So they went to Ukraine and set up tech teams to recruit the best people. Because they said, like, we don't get the talent we need, so why don't we just go to the talent and do it that way? And then another example that I just shared in the break before we started here was a very simple access barrier we have is language. We now all talk in English. In the break we talked in German, but in a German company, and one of the biggest companies I worked with was here in Düsseldorf, most of the people speak German, right? But we now get in a lot of people who come maybe from Egypt, some of them come from Syria, some of them come from Brazil. They, of course, don't speak German. But it's a hard burden for the 55-year-old engineer who has worked all their life in German to now be forced to speak English. So for both parties, they mean well, but it's such a big barrier to get to speak the same language and work together. And we have to acknowledge that and not just tell them you have to change by tomorrow. So getting to that same stage, that is the access barrier. Teaming barrier is making this team work, getting them to the same speed to overlook those frictions. And then it's about output, because at the end of the day, we of course want to have new products. And there we want to transition companies to a culture where what matters is really that output-driven culture, and what we need for that is a culture where it's about divergent thinking. That means oftentimes we have to talk about hierarchies. We have to ask very difficult questions about hierarchy and about norms, cultural norms. And that is very individual also for firms, but it's a transition process, and we have to accept that this will also take time. So yeah, we can go into more depth later on, but I think maybe, Kirsten, that is something that you have more experience than we do from a practical standpoint.
Absolutely, and I was just going to ask Kerstin about, you focus on strengthening strengthening individuals rather than companies as a total. But and you especially focus on helping top executives. We're going to talk about that in a while. But first, and for a start, can you probably share how you do that? Can you share an exercise with us?
Yes. So one thing is it's important to have that research, right? So that when people want to understand what's the power of diversity, they need to see numbers. They need to see results, right? That's the conscious part. The other part is, to give them an experience. What does it mean for their everyday life, right? So there is a big topic, diversity boosts innovation. But what does it mean? So what I often do is I show them this paperclip. I don't know if you see it in the camera. I show them a paperclip, and I ask them, I give them 90 seconds time or 2 minutes time, and say, what can you do with a paperclip besides clipping paper, right? And I give them 2 minutes time. They start to write down, and I increase the pressure a bit and say, okay, now 30 seconds, come to an end, etc. So after that short time, I ask them how many solutions they have got. And normally they have like 4, 5, 6, 7, something around that, right? So I ask one person to tell me what are the solutions, what they can do with a paperclip, and I start to note it down on a flip chart, right? And I ask the others then to step in and say, do you have other ideas, right? And then someone says, yeah, I can do an earring with it, and I can change a SIM card, and another person says, oh, I recently just opened my desk at, because it was locked. So there do come so many different ideas together, and then they see the overall list is like 20 to 30 ones, and then they see, okay, the power of the different perspectives is really there. So then we discuss what does it mean for that everyday life, and they come up and say, okay, we notice that when we have a problem, we always go to the same 2 or 3 people. But if we include other voices, if we give other people also some words and ask for their perspectives, then we have a much greater output. And that's a really great example how to show how innovative, diverse people, a diverse bunch of people can be.
Yeah, what a great example. I don't know whether you are working with Philip or you have been working with Philip yet for Merck. Philip, at the board of big companies like Merck, or are boards of big companies like Merck already fully aware of the potential of diverse ideas that Kerstin just described? Are they aware? And if they aren't fully aware, what can an LGBTIQ executive like you do to help them?
I would say, in the wrong position to say that they are totally aware of the potential diverse workforce could have to the outcomes of the company. But certainly, I think they have well understood that it's more than just integrating a diverse workforce in a well-being. So it's a business case, and once it comes to companies like Merck, but also many others, where research and science is so much in the focus, I think the example Kerstin just gave us is just a wonderful add-on how the workforce can really contribute to a kind of a broader view on science and a broader view on outcomes. So I think that these examples now need to be translated into numbers and into really business cases so that board members who simply think in numbers well understand the need of bringing diversity not only as a cultural element into the company, but as a real business growth driver to the organization. So when I had been asked to answer your question, are all boards ready to go for it? Yes, I think from a cognitive point of view, they have well understood the need for that. But would I say that they are passionate living it and they are investing all their capacities in really moving the needle towards the right direction? I think there's a lot of room for improvement. And I think that is simply because the business cases are not there, and we are on that journey. We are not there yet, and there are some great companies in the DAX community already who are showing as a great performance in posting their commitments. I'm not sure, and I think that needs to be double-checked, to what extent are they also translating these poster storylines into real actions. From a science and kind of research point of view, I must say this is simply a must to survive a couple of things. It is the ideation piece, creating ideas. It is this simple question of how do we get the right talents in the right spots. And I mean, the COVID-19 pandemic has shown us that it's no longer important that we relocate people in Germany, in Frankfurt, or in London, or in the New York office. So that created already a bigger spread of location-independent roles and opened up a diverse workforce in a way what we had not thought, I don't know, 2 years or 3 years ago.
Can you give us an actual example of how to measure that business perspective? What are the key factors for diversity success, if you want to call it like that?
I mean, if I would be able to give you a list of 5 to 6 KPIs where I can immediately prove the rationale behind a kind of a driver into outcomes, that would be awesome. Certainly the most obvious ones, having more women in our workforce, this is a given fact that this creates already something different than if we would have had only men. And I think now it's the time, and I was very carefully listening to the BCG setting to say, in 5 years' time, we want to increase the LGBTI community with 5% in our workforce. I mean, wow, this is a statement. And the question now is, how can we correlate kind of diversity factors with business outcomes? And some of them are very obvious, and some others not. And I think that is currently something where companies like BCGs and others definitely must help the organizations to come to not only statements and to say, we need to embed that into our marketing strategy, we need to embed that into our sales approach, into our research activities, but we correlate that into a dashboard and we monitor that respectively. And definitely it's not only about LGBTI, it's about the total entire world of diverse thinking.
Which doesn't make it more easy, actually, but even more important. So my guess is still that running a startup makes it actually more easy because you're the founder, you're part of the board, you start new. Is it easier for a startup to be diverse?
No, because it's different. Because the startup is younger, it's hip, it's fast, but actually startups are very homogeneous. It is this English-speaking, white, young people. That's it. We don't have moms. We've seen when you have a mom, suddenly you have different problems. I'm the oldest employee by far. Yeah, so there's not diverse at all. And that's what we see. And I would not say that's easier. It's different, but it's probably not that obvious. But probably a company like Merck is much more diverse than most hip startups in Berlin. And I would say, and I think they are even more ahead in terms of being aware of it, because for startups, it's not so obvious. And on the other hand, the big advantage of traditional companies is you have the resources to work on it. So I had a discussion with somebody to do trainings on diversity, and actually it was about also when we had Black Lives Matters on racism. For me to do a training on that, it's quite an effort, yeah? So we really need to think about the money to spend, and we have only few people, which is probably for a larger organization super easy, but for a startup it's not. So I would say it's different, but definitely not easier, or they are more advanced.
And we're going to hear more about your startup in a minute. Anna.
Yeah, I just quickly wanted to react to what you were saying about the business case, because I do get that we need the business case, and it is something that I think the research community where I am a part of, it is a call, I hear you, and it's something we're working on. It's very hard, but it's really feasible. The other thing that I think companies also need to hear and to listen to is the global trends that are there, and it's also a response to Felix's talk that he gave before. If we look at statistics where global talent is right now, 20 years ago, 60% of college graduates were educated in Europe, in the US, in Japan, and in China. Today, 60% are educated outside of these countries. So we see a massive shift of where people are educated. That means we will have to broaden our perspective on where we get talent from. That is true for diversity of origin. So before Felix was he was asked the question, like, aren't we lowering our standards when we're looking towards the LGBTQ community? No, we're broadening our perspective of where great people are coming from. And that is, I believe, something that we don't talk about often enough. Where are the people who are best educated, who are very driven? Where do they come from, and where's the trend going? And I do believe, next to the business case, that is something maybe that can be discussed in executive suites as well.
Yeah, this is maybe also a question that casting can address, because you're focusing on bringing individuals to peak performance. Now, if these individuals come from different backgrounds, from diverse backgrounds, you cannot probably always use the same methods, right? So what is your key to success to ensure that not only members of the LGBTIQ community, but also members of the Pride community coming from everywhere are able to develop within an organization?
I think an important point is that we make top managers or managers aware that diversity and inclusion is not an HR topic. You know, I experience it in a lot of workshops that managers say, okay, yes, we do all about diversity and inclusion, we understood it's important, so HR, please do, you know, and they lay back and say, okay, that's not my cup of tea. But that's not the case, right? We need to make them move and get them engaged in really seeing what they can do. So another important thing besides, you know, putting it from a conscious part to a more practical part is to, you know, to take the fear away of them. I think it's not a good thing to go to the manager and say, you did that and that wrong or whatever. You know, we are explaining with the latest research on neuroscience why, for example, we do have biases. And that's okay, right? Because biases do help us to make a very complex world a bit easier, to take, you know, quicker decisions. But we also show them that if we only follow those paths, we might lose a lot of opportunities. And, you know, like going away from this path is not very easy. I mean, in the recruitment part, for example, you know, like having someone that is a bit different than myself. I mean, you know, it's not comfortable always, or when somebody speaks up and says, hey, we did something maybe wrong, we can do something. That doesn't feel comfortable in the first way. So we need to give those executives comfort in order to, you know, understand why we are like that, but then to get them engaged. And they can do it in different way. And we saw it in the presentation, I think, of Felix, you know, that there is a broad mass of things that can be done. But let me just nail it down to some small points, right? An important point is when I talk about diversity and inclusion, I show a picture of a herd of zebras. And the managers normally look at me and say, what are you doing here? I mean, these zebras. But, you know, zebras are animals where every zebra is unique. Every pattern that they have is different. There is not a single zebra that is alike than the other, right? But the secret is they feel part of a herd. And they understand that they will survive, they will reproduce, they will grow because they are part of the herd, right? And that's about diversity and inclusion as well. Being unique on the one hand, but on the other hand, feeling to be part of a group, right? And then another important thing is empathy. You know, especially in today's world where we are talking about social distancing, about video conferences, people have a bit the impression that because they see in the background a dog going through or the partner or whoever, they have insights into the life of the other person, right? And they forget to ask, really, to look behind the camera and say, do you have everything in order to do a good job? How are you? Can I help you to support you and make a better job, right? So it is also this empathy, asking the right questions and showing behind the scene. And then obviously a very important part is communication. Yeah? And communication is, we often have managers who say, well, I told that the person now 10 times and I don't understand why he or she is not doing what I want. And they are not recognizing that people are different and you have so many power in words, in how you phrase things in order to motivate people. And when you are able, to create an environment where people feel being part of and heard, feel being valued for what they are, when you have a speak-up culture, that they can come up with new ideas, that they can come up and speak up when something is not wrong, not going right, all right? So that is something that then, people can live their personal excellence. And that will have a tremendous positive effect on the mental and the physical health of people as well. And I'm talking about all types of diversity, especially LGBT as we are today here. But I don't want to forget about also gender, generation, and all different aspects as well.
The next question is probably a really stupid one, but coming from a gay man, it's probably allowed. Do you experience that for people from the LGBT community, it's easier or more difficult, or there's no difference in becoming a great performer within an organization?
Well, I think in a first step, when people don't feel safe to come out at work, they lose a lot of energy in order to hide who and what they are, right? And that's for the LGBT community. That's the same for a mother that has a child and doesn't talk about it because they fear that they will be stigmatized, like not being a best performer at work. So for all types. So people are really losing a lot of energy and a lot of focus. Right? It is important to motivate people and say, okay, here are a lot of other people around you that for them, this is not a topic at all. And this is why it is so important to have things like PROUT at Work, helping, establish role models, straight allies. We saw at the beginning those allies that step in, and when they hear, for example, somewhere talking in a not appropriate manner about something, to step in and say, hey, this is not good. How you are talking, we don't want this in this at our company, like helping people to create really this environment, but also showing physical examples. I was for more than 20 years in different banks, and I had a little rainbow sign at my office, and it really actually led to some situations that young people came to me and asked me, okay, I saw this rainbow sign here at your office, what does it mean? So I, explained them, and I talked a bit about my background and that I'm married with a woman, and after a while, they felt very safe to come out. And I had a lot of young people that came to me first before then going further. And it is important then to help them to go the next steps. And then you will see that they will feel energized, and then, they can really focus on the job, on performance, on, and have fun.
Yeah, that's also a great little trick. Thanks for sharing that. Till, Kerstin said that diversity is not a topic for HR teams only, or shouldn't be a topic for HR teams only. So is it for you, is it more a social or rather a business decision for a company to engage in more diverse environments, and why?
It depends how I look at it. Mm-hmm. From a pure company perspective, it's a pure business decision. Let me explain you why. From a social perspective, it is more beneficial if I have a very homogeneous team, because then people feel more comfortable. So just imagine what they do in their free time. So most of my team are big soccer fans, and they play soccer twice a week, whatever, yeah? So, but those who are not are kind of excluded. And so the soccer is important because I talk about the next day and that kind of stuff. So from that perspective, from a purely social perspective, having a very homogeneous team I would say is more beneficial in terms of have people that feel comfortable, yeah, and feel at home and like their friends. And you also see that in companies where people, they share the same interests, they gather together. That's completely different from a business perspective. From a business perspective, driving innovation, I need diversity, and I love your example. That's perfect, because innovation is about quantity. You need to have ideas. Brainstorming is about quantity of ideas and different perspective, and it's a prerequisite. It's essential. You said that you cannot live without it. Yeah. Same from recruiting perspective. Just the pool is too small, and so I think consulting companies were very good examples. They were all lawyers and business people, and then they did not have enough people, and then they opened up for other majors. So that's when all the people who studied physics came into the consulting companies. That was not because for any weird reasons. That was a very business decision to open up smart people. Where can we get access to smart people? So from that perspective, from a business perspective, yes. From a social perspective, I would say probably not. Having said that, if I take a different perspective, more, I would say, private, or from a personal point of view, and saying, if I would if I would raise a child, I would say it is important to expose people to a diverse environment, to make them a better people, and to have them learn other stuff and to grow. So from that perspective, it is very important. But purely running a company, that's not my major priority. So that's why I would say it's more from a business perspective.
Yeah. So, Philip, when we last spoke, you mentioned that, I think that goes into the same direction. You mentioned that that for companies, it should be a business decision to invest in more diverse teams. But in the end, the value lies in diverse leaders and teams. Can you explain what you meant by that?
Absolutely, absolutely. And first of all, I have, as an HR professional, I have certainly a different opinion on the role of HR in that game. Certainly HR used to be 20 years ago the payroll provider. In the last kind of 15 years, we moved up into a more consulting approach style. And I see now a trend that HR is stepping up and is willing to take the accountability for an aspect of the business, which is called the people dimension. And it's not that we support, that we consult, that we guide the business, but we're going to ensure that something happens in this organization. So we are not out of the business, we are in the business. With that, a very different behavior comes along. That means you need to have the data right, you need to be in consultancy appropriate, and you need to have a respective mandate to behave like that. And therefore, in my role as the kind of people transformation leader in the organization of Merck, I'm very much making sure that HR is positioned in exactly that role. Meaning, concretely, giving leaders a perspective of the future and looking into the leadership role. I mean, 20 years ago, we were very much looking into hierarchical structures and how to bring people up the career ladder and then led from the top down. And that approach was existing many years. Then in the last 15 years, 10 years, and I'm not supported by research now, but just seeing the operations out there, it was that we created leaders who created followers. So again, a role model where a couple of people followed those people, leaders as follower creator. And in these days, I see leaders as platform creators. So leaders who create a space where workforce perform a great job. And for such a role, where kind of workforces are outperforming, where workforces and teams are showing their excellence performance, you need a complete different leadership style. It is not that I go on stage and show my greatness as a leader. It is very much in the background and acting as a coach, as a strong guidance giver, as an inspirator, and also as somebody who is a bit ahead of the curve in terms of group dynamics and in terms of what is relevant for that team. And I hope that gives you a bit of a different perspective on how we at Merck look at leaders. And we are also a 60,000 employees company, so we need to have a certain hierarchical structure, absolutely, and I'm very much into that. And that comes along with a different understanding of leadership of organizations who simply want to outperform the market.
May I ask you something, I worked for a long time in banking, and then I moved to the HR department and led the diversity and inclusion team for 3 years. One of the key success factors during that time was, while talking to the managers of the different sectors, they couldn't say, you have no clue about business, because, I worked in the business before. And I told them what is possible and what not, right? So it was very important to have also people within the HR department that really, were working in the business before, because that has raised their credibility towards that managers. Do you have a same, experience in Merck?
I would absolutely share your experience entirely, and my opinion, therefore, is very clear. We also need HR professionals. I mean, people who have learned that business, because you would have never put a person in a lawyer role if it's not a lawyer per se. So the same for the people business. So I want to really see professional people who have long-term experience in people business leading the people dimension of a company. And I think a core capability of HR professionals, HR per se is something we need to discuss further, but as professionals is to have a good understanding of the business. And that doesn't mean to understand it, it means to deal with the business, to be involved in the business plans, to really not only talk to managers. I mean, this is already creating a distance, it is being part of that dialogue. And I mean, data and analytics give us such a strong power. I mean, you remember times where CFOs were extremely powerful. Why were they powerful? Not because they were super capable, but because simply they had the data and the facts on their balance sheet and on their P&L sheet. And I think nowadays, in the people business, in the diverse business, we are able to provide data, workforce structures, diversity aspects, etc., to make a judgment call. And not only to consult, but to give directions to the business. And I think that is something to come. We are not yet there, but I think you need to have both dreams and aspirations as an HR professional.
Mm-hmm. So before we come to our last round, there's a question I'd like to forward from the audience. Which concrete steps can a company actually take if it recognizes that teams aren't yet fully aware of the values of diverse teams? This is maybe a question that relates to movement as well, Anna, right?
To movement, yeah. So the team itself, what they can do. I mean, yeah, I think it really starts with the leadership. The team can do something by themselves in increasing diversity, but I do think it starts with the leadership. It starts with a commitment to diversity, and it starts with maybe recognizing the business case and recognizing how important it is. And that commitment has to be followed up with an action plan and with seeing like, okay, first, how do we get those numbers up? And that is about recruiting the best talent, retaining the best talent, and really making sure you have that pipeline and defining what diversity means. I mean, BCG now has done it for LGBTQ. We've done it before for our gender quota, but that I think is the first step. But then I think then it really comes to how is our teaming going and what is our culture in terms of our diversity culture that is driven towards output. Because it cannot just be something that is something nice to have. It has to be something that is valuable for the firm that will result in the KPIs that you are asking for, right? So depending on what kind of company you are, hopefully you're kind of an output-driven company with innovation metrics that are behind it. Which metrics are you going to be measured by, and how can you translate the increased numbers in diversity into real output. And I do think that is something that the teams on the ground can help the management understand. Like, what do we believe we can contribute because we have 2 more people on the team that are maybe increasing our diversity rating? How do we believe they help us? And that will be something that not only, I mean, we as researchers can only look from the outside in, but they can help us look from the inside out. And then it's looking at, okay, how has that company transformed because of diversity? And that is, I think the easy thing is starting with stories, and stories inspire. And then if we have a lot of stories, we can aggregate those stories and measure them in on a bigger scale.
Kerstin, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, just as an add-on, because I can really just support what you said. I think there is a strong need for a tone from the top. So you need to have the top management being really committed to that topic, but not only as a lip service. So we are going now to the Charter of Diversity, and we officially sign, and that's it. Nice label, fine, right? But really to go into and reserve a budget for that and give people the possibility to experience that. Obviously, to invest in companies like ours or in PROUT at Work or others in order to do the training, right? But it is really an important thing that the management is behind that and that walks the talk. If it's just a lip service, it will not work.
I can give you an example. I had an experience. We had at BCG an event, an LGBT event. It was in Milano. And then we had the CEO at that time, was Rich Lesser, joining. And I was in charge of the LGBT network at that time. And I thought, Rich is coming in and sitting there for half an hour, giving a speech and leaving. And I was also prepared for that. And I had to do my emails and that kind of stuff. The interesting thing was, Rich was there at 9 o'clock in the morning, and he stayed there the whole day and did not even check his email once. He only took a call during lunch, and that was all. So I was in a shitty position because I couldn't do my emails, and he had asked questions. And honestly, the signal he sent to the team to say, I'm here, I'm listening to you. I'm the CEO of a larger company. I'm spending here my whole day, and it's important for me. And I don't do my emails. I don't do phone calls. I'm here, and that was a big signal. And it was quite interesting for me to see that this situation, I heard about that later from other people, because those people who were attending the meeting, they told it to others. And so it came back. And I think it was a small thing, but at the end it was a very strong signal. And it's all about communication. And you communicate not by only words, you communicate by real behavior. And that was kind of showing commitment, and that is really behavior. And then you can make a change.
If we didn't have 5 more minutes, this would be the famous last words. Thank you. Maybe for a short closing statement from you all, I'd like to start with Philip. In the next 5 years, what will you definitely have accomplished to foster more diverse management in Germany?
Wow. I hope we have fostered a more diverse management across the world and across the globe, because diversity comes with a global footprint. And I would say we want to reach the numbers we have outlined in our press conference, and we want to reach the numbers not only in terms of women in the company, but also in other aspects of the diversity agenda. So that needs to be realized, and we want to make sure that there are correlations being done between a diverse KPI set, the engagement setting, and business outcomes. If you have reached that, then the basics are done and we can really maneuver in that setup.
I'm looking forward to those KPIs. Anna, what will you have accomplished in 5 years?
To put it in a different way, I want to stop talking about we're all equal, we're not all equal, and I want to be able to accept that and really nourish that also. But what I do want to talk about is equality of opportunity and equality of access. And what I do want to accomplish in those 5 years, wherever I am, is holding whichever CEO I'm working for accountable to that. Or even if I'm fortunate enough of being my own CEO, I want to be able to hold myself accountable to that, because I think that is the most important thing.
Till 2026, what will you have accomplished?
I would love to see that's not a topic anymore. That we don't need to talk about it, and diversity in a broader sense. You brought it up. It's not about LGBT only. It's a very broad thing. And I think if we, sorry, Jean-Luc, if we don't need PROUT at Work anymore, that would be great. And we don't need that because it's just standard. I'm pretty sure it will not be the case, but it would be great. So let's maybe put another 5 years on top
You're good
of it.
at closing statements. I'll remember that. So next time you'll be last. Kerstin.
Well, I hope that we have reached a lot of companies within Europe, that we have done a lot of trainings to motivate and inspire lots of managers and their teams in order to get engaged, to understand about the importance of that topic, and to really create an environment so that people can live their personal excellence.
Thank you very much to the wonderful panelists here. And I have to ask you to leave the stage, even if it's getting comfortable here, because we are coming to the next session. And it's going to be a fireside chat with Dr. Ina-Marie Blomeyer and Annika Sawatzki. The two will be talking about LGBT+ and politics and give us an outlook towards regulations, opportunities, and challenges. But first, let me quickly introduce the panelists. Dr. Ina-Marie Blomeyer is coming from the German Federal Ministry for Family Affairs, Senior Citizens, Women and Youth. From May 2000 onwards, she has been working for the BMFSFJ and the German Federal Discrimination Agency in various positions. Since 2014, she leads the Department for Same-Sex Lifestyles and Gender Diversity. Welcome. It's great that you're with us.
Thank you.
And Annika Sawatzki, you already know her. She's Managing Director and Partner, as well as Head of Pride at BCG, number 2 of the top 100 out executives Germany. I'll hand over to you, Annika.
Thank you, Holger. I heard a great quote about diversity and inclusion from Werner Myers. Diversity is about being invited to a party. Inclusion is about being asked to dance. I think in recent times, we managed okay when it comes to diversity, but there's still a long way to go when it comes to inclusion. We heard about this in the panel before. Businesses do not exist in isolation. They are part of society, and so are their employees. Legislative and broader social realities impact employees and their ability to perform in a profound way. Businesses are increasingly becoming vocal about it, especially about DEI. But this needs to be accompanied by broader political action in order to achieve sustainable and stable change. And that is where you come into play. I'm very happy to have you here today, Ms. Dr. Bloomberg, and I'm very much looking forward to our discussion.
Thank you. My name is Blomeyer, but Bloomberg is very nice.
Blomeyer, I'm sorry for that.
No problem.
I read it several times before, I made a mistake anyway. Well, politics has already achieved quite some progress in Germany. For example, the introduction of marriage for all, as same-sex couples are allowed to marry in Germany. But still, there is a long way to go and a lot to do. For example, if we look at incidences of hate crimes and so on in the population that still seem to be omnipresent. So my first question is, how do you assess the current situation in Germany, and how far are we in terms of acceptance and inclusion of LGBTQ+?
Well, the results of a survey of the Federal Anti-Discrimination Agency shows that the majority of our citizens still witnesses discrimination of homosexual and bisexual people. It's more than 81%. 95% of those surveyed, therefore, are in favor of having legal ban on discrimination. And still, a very significant percentage of population considers homosexuality as something immoral and unnatural and opposes equal rights. That's 12% still. And subtle forms of